Okay, welcome everyone. It's great to have you with us this evening. Today is Wednesday, July 9th, 2025, and this is the Bear Smart Durango Education Series online. We hosted this back in 2021, and we're excited to be back with you again now in 2025 to talk about all things bears and how we can stay safe in bear country. So we have a couple of exciting presentations for you all tonight. The first one will be a pre-recorded session by Daryl. He actually was double booked, so he wasn't able to join us live, but he recorded his session. It's really excellent. And then we have Kim, who will be introducing herself in just a moment. And she is with us here live and will be giving her presentation as well. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. And as you go along, feel free to type any questions in the chat. And we have Brian Peterson here, the Executive Director of Bear Smart Durango, and he will be facilitating the Q&A after Kim's presentation. So we're very grateful to have the Durango Herald be sponsoring this series. Our next session will be next week with Amber, and Amber is joining us here today. Amber will invite you to maybe just do a quick shout out, let us know who you are and what your presentation will be about next week. And then the following week after that, we will have Erin and then Jameen and then Justine. So we've got a well-packed educational series for us here in July and August. And once again, this is sponsored by the Durango Herald through Bear Smart Durango, and my name is Sandhya Atkinson. I'm a professional facilitator based in the Durango area, and my practice is sagebrush. So I'm here to help support. If you have any tech questions, feel free to private message me in the chat, and I'd be happy to help you out. So with that, I'd love to have Kim, you introduce yourself, and then we'll invite Amber to introduce herself as well for next week.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for having me, and of course to the Herald for sponsoring this event. These talks are so important for the public to get access to. There's not a lot of opportunities to have talks like this and to actually have this available for people, especially now we're in the middle of bear season. It's great to have. So I am going to be missing Daryl tonight. Him and I like to pair up and do talks sometimes. So he's sorely missed, and we so sure wish he was here. I started my career working with black bears and grizzly bears in Banff National Park just over 20 years ago, and I had the pleasure of getting to see these animals in their natural habitat doing what bears do. And then I quickly learned that human beings do not know how to behave around bears at all. And it really inspired my career and my concern for the conservation of these species. And I thought the best way that I can help people and help bears was to educate people about them. So when I finished university and finished my job with Parks Canada, I got a call asking if I would start a conservation strategy wildlife management plan for the region of what's called the Bow Valley so that's Banff, Canmore, Kananaskis area. It's just west of Calgary in the Rocky Mountains. And we have about 4 million plus visitors a year to the area, and bear population that is really stressed by the amount of people in that area. So unfortunately, after I graduated from university, only a couple of weeks afterwards, I got a call that a woman had been killed by a grizzly bear in my community of Canmore and asked to start this program. It ended up growing into something very similar to Bear Smart communities, which we have, of course, in Durango. We called it Wild Smart, and we made it a multi-species approach because not only do people get attacked by bears in that area, they also get attacked by other species like elk, moose, coyotes, cougar attacks. So it's kind of a mecca for human-wildlife conflict because of the amount of human beings that are in that area, traveling, living, recreating, and working. And after running that organization for almost 10 years, I then started my own consulting business called Bear Safety and More. And now I travel all over North America area, teaching bear and wildlife safety classes, doing bear hazard assessments and other types of research related to helping communities live with these animals. And I've been doing that for a number of years now, and I love it. And I get to work with large scale industry, trying to help them have much larger scale impacts in the areas where they work, and so that they're not causing bears to get into trouble with people, or bears having to get shot for doing things like getting into things like garbage. So it's a lot of fun. And when I do get a chance, I love to get to do these talks. We do offer our courses online, self-directed for the public. So at the very end, if you can stay at the very end, there will be time for questions. And I'll also share a link to my website and a coupon code so you get a discount on the class if you decide you want to take a bear safety class and learn more extensively about this information past from what we can teach you today. And that's it. And that's me.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for introducing yourself, and we can't wait to hear your presentation here in just a few minutes. And Amber, not to put you on the spot, but I know you are presenting to us next week. Would you like to say hi really quick and let folks know who you are, what you do?
Yes, you are putting me on the spot. I'm a little bit of a hot mess here. But yeah, hi, I'm Amber Cornick. I work for People and Carnivores here out of Helena, Montana. I cover the Helena, Montana surrounding areas and a little bit north of here. I'm going to give a talk on what People and Carnivores do. We're a nonprofit. So I'll talk about what we can offer in regards to bear resistant materials and why those materials are super important. Yeah, and I'll touch on a little bit of the other predators that we cover as well.
Thank you so much, Amber. We're looking forward to it next week. Great. Well, without further ado, let's dive into Daryl's presentation, and he'll introduce himself. And then we'll hear from Kim, and then we'll have Q&A. So feel free, if questions come up, to type them in the chat, and we'll save those for Q&A afterwards. And just so you know, this session is being recorded, and the link will be posted onto the Bear Smart Durango website in the next couple of days. So if you missed the meeting, or if you want to look back at it for future reference, we will be letting you know about that. Okay, so let's get rolling here. Give me a second just to set things up.
Hi, everybody. Daryl Ratajczak here, and unfortunately, I'm not here live and in person. I pulled a boneheaded play and forgot I'm going to be in the Wasatch Mountains today, and there's no cell or Wi-Fi reception up there. So I made this recording. A huge thank you to Brian. My apologies to you and everyone, and Kim. I wish I could be there live and in person, but I can't. So I'm going to give you about 25 minutes of my best stuff. So sit back, relax, and hopefully you'll have lots of questions that we can answer afterwards. So I was asked today to talk to you on behalf of being safe in bear country. And the best way we know how to do that is to understand bear biology and bear behavior. So before we jump into things, I just want to assure everyone that I've been doing this for a long, long time. I am a wildlife biologist, got my degree in wildlife biologist. I've worked for state wildlife agencies, federal wildlife agencies, as well as nonprofits. And most of my work revolves around carnivores and other large mammals. So it's something that I'm passionate about. And so everything I'm going to be teaching to you today is going to be science-based. Now, to get things started, I think the first thing that we need to understand is, where is bear country? Bears, black bears in particular, we're going to focus on black bears today. Black bears in particular pretty much wandered all over North America. Now, when the Europeans came in the 1600s, 1700s, we didn't really get along too well, and so we extirpated, or we killed them out in many areas. Fortunately, black bears are repopulating their historic areas. So you find them in almost all the lower 48 states. They might be smaller populations depending on what state you're in, but bear country is beginning to be pretty much everywhere we have mature forests. But you all know where the bears live in your state. So this is what we're going to be talking about, how to be safe in bear country. Now, if you are in bear country and you have this guy walking around, don't you all think it'd be pretty good to know what to do should you in case you bump into him. So that is what this presentation is going to be all about. And the way we begin to teach that is I've got to teach you a little bit about the biology and behavior of black bears. And so what we're going to do, we're going to start with some basic biology. And I want everyone to understand what a black bear is. And I know most of you do, but there's some misconceptions out there. So first and foremost, they're not as big as people think. Black bears are not this gargantuan animal. Typically, males range anywhere from 250 to 400 pounds, which is a big animal, don't get me wrong. But if you look at those mature females, you're looking at weights of 150 to maybe 200, maybe 250 pounds. And that's on average. There could be much bigger, there could be much smaller. But on average, many of those bears are the size of a large human being. So because of that size relationship between black bears and humans, they tend to be a little bit more timid to us rather than, say, a brown bear or what we call a grizzly bear, because those do get much larger. So black bears are not as big as many people believe them to be. Now, if you look at kind of what makes them tick, I think what makes them tick is the fact that they're omnivores, which means they'll pretty much eat anything and everything. And I more or less call them eating machines. And the reason I say they're eating machines has a lot to do with the fact that they hibernate. Bears, as you know, during the wintertime go through this dormant period. Um, Depending on where you're at, could be as short as a few weeks, could be as long as 4 to 6 months, depending on what latitude you're on. And so when you do have this dormant period, it kind of starves the body. And so when bears wake up in the springtime, they're super hungry. They gotta gorge themselves to replenish the weight they lost during their hibernation. Summertime, there's usually plenty of food around, but then when fall rolls around, they go through this phase we call hyperphagia, where they're eating machines and they're trying to pack on the pounds for their next hibernation. So, how do bears go about finding all this food that they require? Well, they use their senses. And first or foremost, their sense of sight or their ability to see is very similar to what humans have. And so we all know what our eyesight is like. That's pretty much what bears see as well. Now, when it comes to hearing, bears do have a much more acute sense of hearing than humans. They can hear things that we cannot. But here's what really separates them. Their sense of smell. It's literally unequaled in the mammal world. I wrote an article called The Nose, the Glorious Nose, which goes into tremendous detail about their nose. But I'm going to try to explain it here as well, because their nose is what really sets bears apart and kind of what drives this idea of having bear-human encounters. So back to biology. Why do bears have such a great sense of smell? Well, it's easy. You look at the biology. You look at that skull on a bear. It looks like a normal skull until you turn it face on and you see this. You see this huge opening where this nose is, and you see all the cavernous material in there, all those nooks and crannies. That nasal cavity is absolutely jam-packed with olfactory receptors. That's just a scientific term for smell receptors. And so it's been roughly calculated that they have 2,000 times more smell receptors than us. So they can smell 2,000 times better than us, which is, that's a lot, but I don't really understand what that means. And so I developed this little analogy for you. It's called smell the beans. So you take a can of beans you buy from the grocery store, you come home, and as a human, we can open up that can of beans, pour it into a pot on the stove, and we begin cooking those beans, and alas, we can smell the beans. Now, you take your average house dog, whatever kind you have, and you're cooking those beans on the stove, that dog could probably smell the beans from outside the house. So, man, they got a really good sense of smell. Now take the best dog smell there is, the bloodhound. It's said that they have a sense of smell 300 times better than us. Believe it or not, folks, they can likely detect the beans on the can, even before you open the can, they can smell remnants of bean juice from the factory or whatever. That's how strong their sense of smell is. You don't even open the can and they know what's in it. Now, how about that bear? That bear can likely smell the perfume that was on the person that put the beans in the can to begin with. And so that just goes to show their sense of smell is pretty much something we can't comprehend, but it's what drives these animals. And so it's so very, very important that we know that their sense of smell is so powerful. Now, why is it important? It's because this is why bear spray is so effective. If you want to be safe in bear country, you're going to use your brain first. But the other tool that is so effective is having bear spray. The reason being, I just described their sense of smell being so, so powerful that you take that can of bear spray, and this is the actual bear spray, not some knockoff product from a Walmart, but you spray that bear spray at a bear, and if it gets in that nasal cavity, you know how much we don't like that peppery smell. Imagine having 2,000 times more powerful a nose. It pretty much short circuits the bear's brain. And so this is why it's so effective, well over 90% effective at stopping a charging bear. And so what I hope to do now is to teach you when you should use it, because you don't have to use it unless it's an extreme situation. So let's talk a little bit about bear behavior. Now remember, they're driven by food. In the spring, they wake up, they're gorging themselves on the green shoots. Summer, there's plenty of berries, cherries, choke cherries, service berries, plenty of food out there for them. Then the fall, their diet switches to what we call hard mast or the nut crop. Very high calorie rich diet. They're starving for calories because they want to pack on pounds. And this is where it gets complicated because their thirst or their drive to find high caloric foods often leads them in conflict with humans, whether or not it's picnic areas, campgrounds, trash cans, anything that the bear could perceive as potential food source, they'll be drawn to it. And so oftentimes we have these bear human encounters because there's lots of bears out there, there's lots of people out there. The good thing is when we do encounter a bear, the bear, they're so smart, they often try to communicate with us and tell us what's going on in their mind. Now, I will say, I will preface, nothing's 100% certainty, but when you see these behaviors enough, you have a pretty good idea what the bear is going to do, but never totally think you know exactly what the bear is going to do. So let's talk about having a close encounter with a bear. And so, say you're out on a hike and you see a bear down in the valley eating wildflowers or whatever it's doing, and he goes about his business. That's not a bear encounter, that's a bear sighting. A bear encounter is when you are in such close proximity to that bear that that bear alters its behavior. You likely alter your behavior as well, but you're close enough to each other that you each know each other is there and you're going to react to the other person's presence. So let the fun begin and let's figure out what bears are doing when we have these close encounters. So the key here to being safe is you have to understand and you have to know how to read body posture and vocalizations. And the first thing you want to do is you want to determine what kind of situation are you in with this bear. And there's two primary situations you need to figure out. It's either this one or that one. It's pretty simple. There is a defensive situation and there's an offensive situation. And I'm mostly talking in the bear's perspective. So in a defensive situation, the bear's intention is to get you away, get you to increase the distance between you and them. They're they're upset, they're worried about something. They want you out of their space. Now, in the offensive situation, it's the complete opposite. The bear's intention is to decrease the distance. They want to get closer to you. More than likely, it's because they're attracted to some type of food source. And so Defensive situations, the bears want you away. Offensive situations, the bears want to get close to you. Real simple. Only one of two things. Now, let's talk in detail about a defensive situation. And there's multiple situations that can be defined as defensive. So first and foremost, you're walking down the trail, not very good visibility. You walk around the corner and boom, there's a bear 10 feet away. This is a surprise encounter. The bear does not want you in his space. He's going to act defensively. You could stumble upon a food source of a bear, whether or not it's a carcass or a berry patch or a nut crop, or heaven forbid, a trash can or a dumpster. A lot of times people love hiking with their dogs, and their dogs can cause a bear to react defensively. The dogs are getting in their personal space. Once in a blue moon in the early summer, you could come across multiple adult bears. They're in the middle of their mating season. You don't want to get in between them at that time either. But probably the number one defensive situation you may encounter is a female with cubs. She's going to defend those cubs. You don't want to get anywhere near a bear, a mama bear with cubs. And so these are all defensive situations. And they're probably the most popular, most common encounters that you may have with a bear. Now remember, in this defensive situation, the bear's intention is to increase the distance between you and them. And in order to do that, they're going to put on a show. They're going to get all blustery, loud, make lots of noises, trying to scare you away or let you know that they're upset with how close you are to them. And so there's a number of behaviors they're going to go through. And all these behaviors are pretty much telling you that they're upset with your presence. And so they may pop their jaws. They'll smack their lips together real fast, going. Another thing they may do is they're going to huff. These are the exaggerated breaths. They'll go. And so that too is telling you they're upset or nervous. They may do some vocalizations where they moan, kind of like Chewbacca moans. But crazy enough, they lose facial control. So if you see a bear yawning or salivating and you're pretty close to it, that's a sign that they're nervous. They're not tired, they're not hungry, they're nervous because of your presence. Now, if you don't back up and get out of their space, they're going to up their game and they're going to tell you to back up. So one thing they might do is a bluff charge. And this is where they will take one or two steps in your direction really quickly, and it's going to scare the pants off of you. And that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to scare you away from them. Sometimes they'll do what we call ground swatting, where they'll take a nearby bush or a log or something, and they'll just hit it really hard. And they're more or less saying, if you don't leave, this is what I'm going to do to you. And so these behaviors are really effective at letting us know that the bear is upset and does not want us around. So how do we react? This is our chance to communicate with them. So like I said, in this defensive situation, say you encounter a mother with cubs. First thing, don't pose as a threat. They're nervous to begin with. If you're in their personal space, they don't want you there. So don't act all threatening. Slowly back away, talk calmly. Now, if the bear comes at you, shout at it, but shout softly, like, whoa, bear, whoa, whoa, I'm sorry, did not mean, whoa, I'm getting out, I'm backing up. So you're trying to lower the tension between you and that animal. And lastly, and this is where things differ with some things you read. Y'all have heard the nursery rhyme, if it's black, fight back. Please forget that. Your reaction needs to be based on the bear's behavior, not what color it is. So if you're in a situation where you surprise, say, like I said, a mom with cubs, the last thing you want to do is act really aggressive. So if she comes at you immediately, drop down, curl up, cover your neck. She's just trying to eliminate that threat to her cubs. You might get bit, you might get scratched, but hopefully she just takes her cubs and moves on. Now, here's where you do fight back. If she continues that fight, you're going to have to fight back with all you have. But initially, most bears in a defensive situation, They don't want to get into a fight. They just want to eliminate that threat. And so if you are not a threat, hopefully they just move on and go about their business. And so that's how you react. Stay calm, talk softly, back away. Those bears want you out of their space. All right, that was the defensive side of things. Now let's talk about the offensive side of things. There's only two situations pretty much where a bear will act offensively. The first is where they're trying to get a food reward. They smell something on you, whether or not it's in your pack, on your clothes, maybe perfume. They're curious as to, hey, I wonder if this human has something that I could eat. That's the primary offensive maneuver for a bear. The other one is when they truly act predatory. And instead of seeing something in your pack as the food source, they see you as the food source. This is the most dangerous. Fortunately, it's also the least common. This does not happen very much. Both of these situations are not good. You don't want a bear approaching you trying to get food. Now, remember, in an offensive situation, the bear's trying to decrease the distance. They're trying to get close to you. So instead of being all loud and boisterous like the defensive situation, they're in stealth mode. They're going to be quiet. They're going to be sneaky, trying not to make noise, trying to get as close to you as possible without you being aware. So, what is the bear trying to communicate to us in this offensive situation? Simple. He's just saying he's hungry. He's looking for food. And so they may do this stalking posture where they're kind of creeping up on you. Another thing to watch out is constant pursuit. Just because a bear is walking down the path behind you, he could actually just be walking on the path. But if you turn and go in a different direction and that bear turns and follows you, your spidey senses better start tingling. They tend to keep their head low or swaying back and forth, kind of like a predator stays low in that crouch, and their eyes remain locked on you. They don't want to lose this potential food source, so they keep watching you wherever you go. So these are signs that the bears give that tells you what they're doing. And so how do you react in an offensive situation? Completely different than the defensive situation. First off, no, you don't make a will. You can get out of this, I swear. The first thing you do in an offensive situation is you don't pose as a meal. You don't pose as that food source that they're looking for. You make sure it is crystal clear that they are not getting any food from you, whether or not it's in your pack or it's your right thigh. They're not going to get any food from you. And so obviously in this situation, you're going to slowly back away, try to find someplace safe, whether or not it's a cabin, a car, other hikers. You're trying to find a safe place. But in this situation, if the bear continues to come at you, you get aggressive. You shout like you mean it. You become the dominant bear. You let them know that if they come to try to eat something from you, you're going to eat them instead. So this is where you get all banshee, very mean and boisterous, throw things, look big, act really, really tough because this is what you got to be. Now, in this situation, if contact occurs, obviously you're going to fight back. The bear's looking for food from you, and you got to make sure he gets the message you're not going to be an easy meal. So that summarizes the two things. I created this little graphic. It's kind of busy, but it pretty much just summarizes the last 20 slides I had where offensive behavior, the bear's going to be sneaky and quiet, trying to get close to you. You get aggressive, you scare him away. Defensive situation, the bear is nervous. It does not want you around. It has cubs, a food source. You're too close to it. They're popping their jaws, they're huffing at you, they're bluff charge. They want you out of there. Just slowly, calmly back yourself out of there. Both situations, see that thing in the middle? Bear spray. If you have it, it's your second line of defense after your brain. Wonderful, wonderful tool. So forget the nursery rhymes. Base your reaction on the bear's behavior, not on its color. So with that, I'm going to summarize and just let you know, bears are extremely intelligent, wonderful animals. Favorite animal that I have ever worked with. And the cool thing is they try to speak to you. And if they do, the best thing you can do is listen. And so with that, I want to say thank you. I have to give credits to all the people that sent me wonderful photos for this presentation. If you liked what I saw, I did write a book. You can find it on, you can just Google spooning a bear and it'll pop up on Amazon. But it's all the stories of when I was working with bears as a young wildlife biologist. I do have a website that is under revision. It's really, really close to being released, a new version of it. I do have lots of podcasts out there with a coworker of mine, but the best way is probably follow me on Facebook at Wildlife for You. So with that, I love doing these talks. Again, my apologies for not being there live and in person today. Wish I could, but I will answer whatever questions you have, provided Brian gets them to me. So with that, I'm going to thank you. And I will let you guys get back to Brian and Kim, but appreciate everyone out there.
All right, let's go. A round of applause for Daryl. Thank you so much, Daryl, for recording that in advance. No, I learned a lot. And we'd love to hear from folks before we transition to Kim's presentation. What's your biggest takeaway from Daryl's presentation? We know that we retain a lot more information if we're given a moment to reflect on it. So think for a moment. One big takeaway might be something that you already knew or something new to you. Feel free to type that into the chat if you're willing. That will just help all of us retain this information more and process it together. Okay, Kathy shared, listen to the bear. Yeah, pay attention to their behavior. Great, anything else? Brian is asking, has anyone heard a stressed out bear with those huffing and bluffing noises? Has anyone heard that before? Dee has. Yes, Tim has. Wow. Trisha's biggest takeaway, respect the bear and carry bear spray. Awesome. Well, keep them coming, folks. If there are things that you want to remember, feel free to drop them into the chat. And we will go ahead and transition over to Kim for your presentation. So I'll hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's always wonderful, watching Daryl's talks. He always comes up with the best infographics, and I just love his whole analogy of the dog food can. It's so great. So yeah, awesome. All right, well, I'll jump in, and I'll try not to go over time. Both Daryl and I love to talk a lot. I think a lot of your presenters that you have coming up that probably would like to do it as well, because we're also passionate about bears. So all right, jump in here. Okay, and if for some reason you can't see what I'm doing, please let me know. Oh, we're playing around with the slides. There we go. There's the start. All right. So in my section, I'm going to talk primarily about just how to avoid these encounters, and also just some things that I think are really important for folks that spend time in bear country to consider carrying with them, and things that I want you to be thinking about if you're going to go camping this summer. As always, I'd like to remind you, please don't sue us. We are trying to provide the latest and greatest information on bear and wildlife safety, but I can't prevent you from being harmed by a wild animal. There's lots of amazing research that's out there, and that helps us to inform what we share with you about bear and wildlife safety. As a lot of you probably learned tonight, bear safety messaging has changed a lot, and that's because of the science that has shown us and the attacks that have happened out there, explaining that you can have a black bear that is defensive, you can have a black bear that is predatory, you can have a grizzly bear that's defensive, and a grizzly bear that is predatory as well. And so we can't just paint them all as one type of behavior and one type of reaction when we're out there. And that's why learning about this stuff is so important. We are trying to be the gold standard for bear and wildlife safety training in North America, and we're still the only company out there that's teaching the science-based courses by credible people who actually work in this field. So really appreciate being asked to come and speak tonight. And I'm gonna jump through that because I might not have time to, it's a really fun video of bears rubbing on trees, which always makes me die laughing. So if I get a chance, if I still have time at the end, I will share it. If not, please do look up bear rub videos, bear tree rub videos. They're absolutely hilarious. I think sometimes when we talk about bear safety and we talk about bear attacks, it's really easy to get very fearful about bears. But the reality is that most of the time, bears are wandering around on this planet, all over the world, and having interactions or trying to avoid interactions with millions and millions and millions of people, and very few cases of actually people being attacked by these animals. Now, the reality is that there are more and more human beings being born every day. And as we have more people on the planet, we are going to have more cases of people being attacked. But it's not that these animals are becoming more aggressive. It's just, unfortunately, they're having more interactions with human beings. And some of those are ones that are not so great, like them getting into people food, to, of course, them get, people surprising bears, not doing the right behavior when they see a bear, not having bear safety information or training, or even the tools like bear spray to use. And then they end up getting attacked because they didn't know how to react to having that encounter. We are concerned about your personal safety when you're out there, and we have a responsibility to nature to do the right thing. If we're going to spend time out in bear country and we love bears, we should educate ourselves, inform and the reason why I say that is, obviously I don't want you to get hurt by bears, but obviously I don't want bears to get in trouble with people, because when bears get into trouble with people, often what happens is they get shot, they get relocated, or they get put in a zoo. None of those are great options for bears, especially when the reason why that happened is because of us. Now, attack rates are definitely occurring and increasing over time with large carnivores. This big bar graph here in the bottom left-hand corner is from a study where a group of biologists got together and they wanted to see how many people have actually been attacked by carnivores in Canada and the United States, and even a bit into Europe with European brown bears. And between 1955 and 2014, there were about 700 attacks. And you're probably going, whoa, I thought there were thousands of them, but there haven't been. But there certainly have been more of them over time, especially in the last couple of decades. So this stuff isn't going away. More people is going to equal more problems. And it's not just bears that attack people. We're also seeing quite an increase in cougar attacks and also coyote attacks. Now, one of the things that was really interesting about this study is they wanted to figure out why people were getting attacked. And they found that about 50% of the time when people were attacked by a large carnivore, they were doing a risk-enhancing behavior. And the other 50% were just wrong place, wrong time, which certainly does happen. And I've got this really cool line across my nose now. I don't know if you can, I'm sure you can all see it. I'm just going to see if I can fix my lighting a bit here to get rid of it, but it might not. All right, better. There we go. And so a lot of this is preventable by doing the right behaviors when we're outdoors. So one thing for sure is you should always supervise your children. If you're going to go out for a hike in bear country, cougar country, coyote country, it is really important to always watch your kids. Don't let them run ahead down the trail or straggle behind, because when children are left unattended, it does increase the chances of them getting into an encounter where they might be perceived as a prey species by a carnivore. So we don't want that. Now, Daryl mentioned dog presence while walking and how that definitely can create a situation where, unfortunately, people can end up in a defensive encounter. And what generally happens is the dog is off leash, they run ahead down the trail, or they run off into the bush, they smell something like, what's that? They go and find it, and it's a bear, or it's a bear feeding on a food source, or it's a bear that has cubs, and the bear sees that dog, and they're like, hey, get away from me, get away from my cubs, get away from my food, and they end up chasing the dog. And the dog, of course, runs back to the human being, and then when the bear runs towards the dog, they see the person, they're like, oh my gosh, there's two of them. There's even a larger threat at hand here. And then they attack the person. And we're seeing, quite an increase in the number of attacks by people with dogs off leash. It's the number one reason that adults get attacked in Canada and the United States by bears. Down in the lower 48 in the United States, unfortunately, research is now showing that a large percentage of the black bear attacks that are occurring are involving people walking dogs off leash, and then the dog causing this interaction, and then the bear defending their cubs, the black bear getting defensive and wanting to protect their cubs from this dog, and then they end up attacking the person and also sometimes attacking the dog as well. Recently, we've had 2 attacks in British Columbia involving dog owners walking their dogs and then running into a mama bear. In both cases, the person didn't see any cubs when they were attacked. Afterwards, conservation officers came to the area, found those 2 different black bears in those 2 different scenarios, and shot and killed those bears. When they looked closer at the bear, they discovered that they were both lactating and they were unable to find the cubs. And in both cases, the cubs died of malnutrition and the mom, of course, lost her life as well. So having your dog on a leash, as hard as it is, as much as I know everyone wants to run with their dogs off leash, it is the absolute worst thing that you can do when you're out there, for your dog's sake and for the bear's sake and for your own safety. Wounded animal hunting incident. If anybody's on the call here that hunts and you happen to go hunting in grizzly bear habitat, we definitely see cases involving bears getting defensive of food sources that they've killed, but also when they found a kill from a hunter. And if they get to that kill before the hunter finds it, they're like, this is mine and this is delicious and I'm not sharing it. And then the hunter shows up, they're looking for the animal that they shot. They're like, where did that thing go? They finally find it and boom, there's the bear on top of it. The bear then gets defensive and then attacks the person in defense of the food source. So safer practices when out hunting, really important to scope the area, make noise, have bear spray on you. If you can go out in a group, if you're out looking for the animal that you shot, it's a safer thing to do. Activity at twilight night, we do see an increase in attacks by carnivores when the sun is rising and when the sun is setting. Carnivores are more active during those time periods. And also they're not expecting you out at, in early morning or into the evenings. Unfortunately, human beings have got into this whole thing with Instagram where we want to have sunrise hikes and sunset hikes. And we're now into those times when these animals are not expecting us to be out there, and you can increase the chance of a surprise encounter. Activity at twilight night is, aside from that, there's of course approaching a female with young. And certainly there are cases where people have done that. We just recently had an attack in Romania. Very, very sad case. A woman was out on her motorcycle. She was going through a very high tourist area that also was well known for hand feeding of grizzly bears, or brown bears, what they call them in that area of Europe. And unfortunately, she got off of her motorcycle and took out her phone and decided to get a selfie with a grizzly bear. And when she did that, the bear attacked and dragged her down into the forest and killed her. This is not the only case I have heard of a person being killed when trying to get a selfie with a bear, but it is something that we are seeing more and more commonly, especially in our park systems where we have visitors that don't understand that it's not safe to walk up to a bear and certainly invade their personal space and try to get a selfie. They don't want that. These animals do have a keen sense of smell. They are curious about their environments. So keeping food away from them is so important. So keeping a clean campsite around your own yard. If you have fruit-bearing shrubs and trees, decide you could pull them and not have them there at all, like cut down those trees and pick fruit-bearing shrubs and trees that don't produce fruit. Not having composters outside during the bear season, not having hummingbird feeders, bird feeders. They're a terrible idea to have in your backyard. And also feeding your dog outside. Leaving dog food outside will attract a bear. So keeping it clean can really help to reduce those challenges that we end up with. Wildlife do use things like town sites as buffers. Animals like elk and deer, if any of you have ever been to places like Yellowstone National Park or Banff National Park, you'll notice that there's a lot of animals in town, and they're often avoiding those predators by coming into town and even giving birth in the spring to their young so they can avoid having them lost to carnivore attacks. Time of proximity, the more time these animals spend around human beings increases the chances of things like them getting hit by vehicles, unfortunately getting into our food and garbage, negative encounters, and in some cases, poaching. Habituation is another issue that is argued quite a bit in the bear biology world. Some people think habituation is a great thing. It's when an animal starts to become more tolerant of people because they've had a higher rate of exposure to them. And this often happens in more front country trails and around town sites where bears start to realize, wait a second, people aren't that dangerous. I can just walk through this campsite, or I can walk down this trail and they'll get out of my way. I'm sick of running off and hiding off the side of the trail when people walk by. Instead, I'm just going to walk down and I'm going to walk through these areas. And it's great that they don't have any interest in hurting us, but the downside to that is if they get too comfortable around people and they start coming into our communities or campgrounds, they may end up getting into things like garbage. And of course, we don't want that. And many communities across Canada and the United States do not have bear-resistant garbage bins in their communities or their campgrounds, and bears routinely get into garbage, then they get shot and killed for it. I just added it in just so you know, bears can read now. I'm just joking, they can't. At least I don't think they can. High risk times are going to be the berry season, when we have lots of berries along the sides of the trails. And that the reality is that during the summer months, when we're also very, very active in the outdoors, berries grow really well on the sides of trail systems and open fields, anywhere where that forest canopy is being opened up. Campsites are another one. If they don't cut the berry bushes in your campsite, you might end up coming to a campsite, you're surrounded by a buffet of food for bears. So these are things that you need to be looking for when you're picking a campsite. If there is a berry crop failure, we do see an increase in conflicts with black bears specifically. They may start coming into communities, getting into things like garbage, and other years when their natural food sources are more available, they'll go back to those food sources. But in some cases, we do have bears that will unfortunately become addicted to garbage, and they'll start coming in and they'll routinely come back every year. Oh, I got a hummingbird feeder in this guy's backyard last year. I bet it's going to be there again. And they come back, they take down the bird feeder again. Working and recreating alone in bear country definitely increases your chances of an encounter. It puts you higher at risk for being perceived as vulnerable, alone, but a possible food source. You could get misidentified as a prey species. It's also an issue for defensive encounters, where by yourself, you may not make enough noise to even let a bear know that you're there. When we look at bear attacks, they generally happen on people when they're by themselves or with one other person. So it's really important, if you can go in a group, do so. Anytime bears gain access to people food, there's a good chance they're going to start coming back for that food source. I just got some pictures sent to me from one of our parks here in Alberta, where unfortunately there was a case where people left, unfortunately, food inside of their tent. A bear came and ripped open the tent and got into it. The next day, the bear came back and they had to evacuate the entire campground. Actually, it was in BC. It was in Yoho National Park. Sorry, I was thinking it was in Alberta. And so the campground was evacuated by Parks Canada, and the bear refused to leave the scene, and it was walking around approaching people. So very, very dangerous situation became of that. And then the calving season in the spring, there's always an increased chance that you could walk up on a grizzly bear feeding on an elk calf or a moose calf during that time of year, because that's when they're giving birth. Picking a trail, consider the time of year. If you are on the coast and you are in areas where there is spawning salmon, think about looking into, is it spawning salmon season? Is this an area that's known for bears to be traveling through and feeding on salmon during that season? Is it the berry season? So usually berries start to come out kind of mid-July and move all the way into the early fall. So doing a little bit of research to find out if the berries are out, and if you're picking a trail that's got a lot of berry bushes on it. If you are by yourself, you may want to choose another path. In the springtime, we often have a lot of spring runoff, and the water levels get higher, and it can get really loud and hard to even hear anything, or even calling to your hiking buddy. They may not hear you. If you've got to do a lot of river crossings or creek crossings, you may want to pick a time when the water levels are a bit lower, because it's going to be very tough for bears to hear you in that area when you're wandering through there. Level of trail use. So often people will pick trails if they're nervous about bears, and they'll pick ones where there's high volumes of visitors. And that can be a good thing, but you're supposing that the bears know that there's high levels of visitors. There could be a bear that wanders into that park and has never been on that trail and has no idea that there's 400 people there every single day, or 2,000 people there every single day. They have no idea. And so it's always important to just assume that bears will be on the same trails no matter how busy they are. Some extra precautions that I think are just a great tool you should have, from, something as simple as a sprained ankle could result with you, being stuck in the backcountry for days and even unfortunately dying of exposure from the elements. So always having a call in, call out procedure is really important. I know a lot of us now have like the new phones where you can actually call 911. Some of us have spot devices, Garmin InReaches. Those are great. Technology is great, but they're not great when they don't work. And so I always, as a backup, let someone know where I'm going and when I'll be back, what type of vehicle I'm driving, where I've parked it, what type of gear I have on me, so that the emergency services folks that are going to come in and do a rescue, they have an idea of, will that person be able to survive the night? Do they have the right equipment? Do they have the right training? Where are they? So we can try to plan our search. If they have very little information, it's not going to be very helpful. So just walking around with a Garmin InReach in your hand doesn't really provide a lot of information for emergency services. So having that plan of a call in, call out with that person having those details of information is really, really important. My brother just texted me 5 minutes ago from his Garmin InReach, and it says, just made it to the Arctic Circle. And I love that. I love that I know where my brother is. I know his entire route that he's doing. He's on a 3-month trip right now. I know that he has a tourniquet. I know that he has a first aid kit. I know all the gear that he has on him. So if something does go wrong and they have to call us, or I don't hear from him, I know exactly what he has so that those emergency services can go in there and help him and do what they need to do to get him out safely. If you can carry a trauma level first aid kit, I'd highly recommend it. On our YouTube channel, we actually have an interview with a wilderness first aid professional who goes over the different types of first aid kits that you should carry on you, depending on if you're going for a hike for an hour to a 3-day, multi-day, big backpacking trip or 10-day trip. If you are in the United States, which I know a lot of you are on this call tonight, there is a free program that I highly recommend that you try. It's called Stop the Bleed. It is free and it's all over the United States. And it is a course that is usually taught by emergency doctors. And what they do is they teach you how to stop the bleed, basically. And they give you an orientation on how to apply pressure on a wound, how to do stuffing of a wound if you need to stuff a wound. So let's say you have someone that's got some puncture wounds, and they also teach you how to use a tourniquet. So you can start carrying it and know how to actually use it. The 10 essentials, which will be in the next slide, which is something you should carry on with you, whether you're on a 1-hour hike to a multi-day backpacking trip. Take bear and wildlife safety training courses. I highly recommend you do your research and make sure you use a provider that has the credibility and background to be teaching it. Since I started teaching courses and since COVID happened, I had to start putting my courses online, self-directed for the public. And there's now thousands of companies out there that may or may not be providing the right information out there. So do your research. And then bear spray, holster, air horn. I highly recommend you carry all 3 things with you. Air horns are not meant to be used on bears that are defensive. Just like Daryl said in the talk, you are, being more quiet, being calm, backing away, giving that animal some space, getting out your bear spray, being prepared to use it. If you start making loud and angry noises, shooting off guns, shooting off bear bangers or air horns at a defensive bear, it increases your chances of a mauling. An air horn can be used in the case of a bear that is being curious or predatory. In that case, you're being loud, aggressive, you're trying to get the animal to leave instead. That's when you could use an air horn. These are the 10 essentials. The U.S. Forest Service has this listed on their website, and these are just great things to have on you in case something goes wrong, from getting attacked by a bear or another wild animal to something as simple as you sprained your ankle and you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can possibly make it out the 4 hours that I need to before dark. I'm stuck here. How can I take care of myself, keep myself hydrated, have nutrition, have an emergency shelter so that I won't freeze to death tonight, and I can take care of myself out in the backcountry. So getting to the end of this, and I know I've only got a couple of minutes left, I just kind of wanted to go over the tenets of the things that we would recommend that you do to avoid getting yourself into an encounter in the first place. So number 1, don't approach bears, don't feed them. The second one, which is the greatest tool that we have as human beings to avoid encounters with these animals in the first place, is our voice. So making tons of noise every couple of minutes as you're walking down the trail, let out like a hoop or a holler to let these animals know what you are, that you're coming in their direction. And if there's a group of you, they hear multiple voices like, oh my gosh, there's a gang of people, I got to get out of here. So it's a great tool, and it's a very effective one at just avoiding encounters in the first place. Watching for signs of bear activity, and we teach that in our courses, you know, looking for tracks, scat, diggings, overturned rocks and logs. So if you start seeing evidence that there's a bear in the area, back away, pick a different trail. You don't need to be on that trail. You don't want to disturb that animal. If you see or smell a dead animal in the area, leave the area. You don't want to end up walking up on a bear feeding on a carcass. Grizzly bears are highly defensive of their kills. Traveling in groups, as I mentioned, if you can go out in a group of 4 or more people, do so and stay together. I know sometimes people straggle behind, or you've got someone who had way too much coffee and they're going ahead of you. We don't want that. We want to make sure that we're staying together, a close group. Carrying bear spray physically on your body, keeping your dog on a leash or leaving it at home if it's highly reactive, storing food and garbage in bear-resistant containers, and just going into bear country expecting to see bear. So we're prepared for that each time we're out there. All right, I'm gonna jump ahead. We talked about the importance of carrying bear spray. Having it physically on you in a holster is really important, not in your backpack. These are some resources that are on our website, bearsafetycourses.com. We really do want you to be thinking about where should I go camping, things that you need to know if you are going to go camping so you can keep a clean camp safe site. Things that you should know when you get to your site. You should be doing a survey of the area to make sure it is a safe site for you to be staying at. Some other things in the backcountry, you really do need to space out where you're sleeping, where you're eating, and where you're cooking, and where you're storing all of your attractants. And I would ask that you share this information that Daryl spoke about tonight and myself. You know, information is so important to share with your friends and family. Last thing is you want someone to get hurt and you're like, oh, if I'd only told them about this or told them to go take a bear safety class or bought them a can of bear spray. You know, share this information so that we can help people be safer in the outdoors and also keep these amazing animals on the landscape. And lastly, we don't want you climbing trees. So please do consider taking a bear safety course. We do have a 3-hour bear safety and bear spray course. You get to learn all about bear spray as well. We've got some amazing interviews in there with people who have survived bear attacks, people that have actually used bear spray, and researchers who've been studying bear attacks in their career for decades. And all of that information combined really helps to people to really learn and have this stuff stick to you so that if you're out there and you do have an encounter, you're going to know what to do and you're going to know how to get out of it. And lastly, since you stayed till the very end, if you are interested, you can go to our website, bearsafetycourses.com, and just use the coupon code Durango and you'll get 20% off course. And I would highly recommend that you invite your friends over and you call it Beer, Barbecue, and Bears Night. And that way you get them to come because they're going to want to eat your food and your beer, but you're going to educate them. And that way, the next time you go for a hike or a bike or a run with your friends, you know that they're all on the same page as you as how they're going to behave when they're in the outdoors. And that's it. So thanks so much. And I know we've only got a couple of minutes for questions. Sorry, it took so long.
Oh, no, you're fine, Kim. We started a little bit late on your section, and we imagine that we'll probably just go overtime for Q&A. Folks, if you want to switch back to gallery view, it's in the top right-hand corner of your screen view, and then you can switch back to gallery if you like. Thank you so much, Kim. That was an incredibly helpful and informational session. And thank you for offering the discount for our communities as well to take some of your trainings and get even more in-depth information. So thank you, thank you. Those courses are linked in the chat, so everyone should have that. Perfect. And also just a reminder for folks to register for next week's session and the upcoming training series. That will be going live probably tomorrow, and we will email you as well if you registered for today's session, letting you know when the next sessions are live and ready. So I'm just going to show that slide really quick, and then we'll start moving into some Q&A. All right, so next week will be with Amber Cornack on people and carnivores. That will be Wednesday the 16th, proven methods in mitigating human and bear conflict. And then we'll be continuing on July 22nd with Aaron Edge, July 29th, and August 5th. So we hope you join us for all of them that you are able to attend. So I'll hand it over to Brian to see if there's any Q&A or follow-up that you'd like to do.
Yeah, Kim, thanks, Andia. Just a quick question. A lot of this was geared towards recreating in bear country. Can you talk a little bit about what people can do at their home, especially if they live in really good bear habitat?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So One of the major there's a few major attractants for around town sites. So when I ran the WildSmart organization, we really tried to focus on what are the things that are drawing bears into our communities and why are they getting shot for it. And initially we wanted to deal with garbage. And so our community got bear resistant garbage bins. So if the number one thing that you want to do is try to push your government into your local government into getting bear resistant garbage bins, if that's not a possibility, the downgrade from that is coming up with some bylaws around when you can put your garbage cans out, so we don't have a bunch of cans out at nighttime where bears are now coming in, knocking them down and feeding on stuff. Right now in Calgary, they're expanding their habitat. They're expanding into bear habitat now, and they're having bears routinely coming in and taking down their garbage. So it's now become a question of when are we going to get bear resistant bins to help those communities out. Second to that would be, aside from garbage, is compost is a big issue. Bird feeders, hummingbird feeders are terrible as well. And feeding dogs outside, not a good idea. The lower hanging fruit, of course, is growing vegetables. Sometimes we can see bears getting into those things too. So that's also a concern. And just generally, like, what kind of bear foods are in your yard? Like, do you have raspberry bushes? Do you have strawberries? Do you have crabapple trees? What kind of fruit bearing shrubs and trees do you have? And we would highly recommend that you cut them down. There are programs that are out there with some bear smart communities where they actually will swap out a tree. And so you're like, I really want to have beautiful flowers, or I want to have really nice foliage in the fall. Well, they can help you come up with trees that are great alternatives to have instead of having that fruit bearing tree or shrub. And one of the things I did with WildSmart was I came up with a list of alternative plants and trees and things that you could do instead. Another thing you want to orient with that is fire smart. So because fire is such a big issue in a lot of bear country, we also have to consider what type of bushes and trees are we planting so that they're fire resistant and not going to increase the chance of a fire around your home site, which is a big issue too. Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Kim.
hopefully that helped.
Yeah, thanks. Another question comes to mind is a lot of the agency talk, if you run into a bear or a mountain lion, is to act big, yell at the bear. Can you talk about when that would be appropriate and when that wouldn't be?
Sure. So I'll speak first about cougars, just a change of topic. So with cougars, generally we don't see defensive behavior with them. It can happen. I've seen a few cases where people have got too close to their kittens and they've had that reaction. But even that, I mean, most cougar biologists that work with trapping of cougars and their kittens don't have that issue. So it's unusual. What we more so do see when it comes to cougars and them getting attacked by people is them being predatory, them perceiving a person as vulnerable as a possible food source. Generally, they're going after the person's dog that's off leash or their child that's unsupervised. But another piece to that is we do see increased attacks with cougars when people are doing a behavior that's fast moving. So if they're trail running or they're mountain biking. So if you're going to be out doing those sports, I would recommend you carry bear spray and have it physically on your body year round. We have had attacks. California, a couple years ago, we lost a young man. He was attacked by a cougar and killed. Him and his friend were looking for deer sheds and just off on a backcountry trail. They didn't have any bear spray. They did the best they could. So if you do get approached by a cougar, you're going to make yourself look big. You're going to pick up your child or your dog if you have a small dog with you or a child with you that's small. Put them either grab them or put them behind you and start making yourself look big. If there's other people, group up. And just like you would with a bear that's predatory, you are trying to get them to think that you are a bigger, larger carnivore and that you're going to fight for your life and it's just not worth it. And they're more likely to back off and leave the area. If they keep coming towards you, you're going to use your bear spray. If they make contact, you're going to fight back with anything in hand, punching at the eyes, stabbing at the eyes, punching at the nose, to try to stop that attack. Now with bears, as Daryl had mentioned, defensive versus predatory, or we call defensive versus non-defensive up here where I live. It's very unfortunate, but you will see even in some of the park services that they still profess to say that black bears, you should always fight back, that black bears are only predatory. It disturbs me on such a high level that our government agencies can't even update their information. And this isn't just true in the United States. I have had these same conversations with government in Canada, not on a federal level, but provincial level, where some of our provinces, we still have really old, outdated information. So please, folks, take bear safety classes. Don't go with that old rhyme that Daryl was mentioning. He's like, we got to throw that out the door. A mama black bear has every right to want to defend her babies, and she's going to act just as defensive, potentially, as a grizzly bear. And you have to remember to back away, give her space, and try to let her know, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt your cubs. And hopefully she backs off and leaves. And if she does run at you, you have your bear spray, you're going to use it. If you don't have bear spray, you're going to drop to the ground and you're going to play dead. The work done by Master's work done by Janelle Sharhag really went and proved that when people do lie down and play dead in a defensive bear attack by a black bear that is defending their young, that they have a much less chance of being killed, that their injuries are much less. When people fought back with a defensive black bear, some of them were severely injured. So we have to really, really, really remember that these animals have every right and will defend themselves, and we have to remember how to behave in response to that. To add to that, with predatory, again, if a bear is following you, it shows stalking behavior, it's quiet, it won't leave you alone. You're going to be really loud and aggressive. You're going to stand your ground. You're going to try to get that animal to leave instead. If you have bear spray, you're going to use it. If they make contact with you, you're going to fight back with anything at hand, punching at the nose, stabbing at the eyes, grabbing a rock, grabbing a branch, doing whatever you can to try to stop that attack.
Thanks, Kim. This was another question that came in. Will playing music or a podcast really loud while solo camping help keep bears away?
It's such a great question. We are seeing more and more people starting to carry like their phone or speakers and playing music. We do not recommend it at all, especially earbuds. The problem with playing music is that now, yes, you're making some type of noise, but the problem with that is now you're not listening. So every couple of minutes now, as you're letting out a hoop and a holler, you're also listening to hear, okay, is there an animal crashing coming towards me or crashing going the other direction? If you're being followed by a cougar or by a bear, you won't hear the sounds of like a branch snapping. You won't hear the huff or chuff or of a bear trying to say to you, you're too close, you're right next to my cub. So you have to have all your senses about you, your sense of smell, your hearing, your sight. You cannot have music blasting. You can't listen to Cardi B. I'm sorry, guys. I know you all want to, but we have to be more aware of our surroundings.
And then Ginny asked, do you have a bear encounter to share with us, a personal one?
Oh, so many. I was just doing a TV interview in Vancouver just before this, and they'd asked me the exact same question. So I will share with you one that my family hates. But my family came to visit me from Toronto, and I made them all wear cans of bear spray in holsters. And we went for a walk on this, honestly, a very busy trail. Like, it's a local trail. There's tons of human beings. We're walking up this creek bed. The water is running high. It is spring, so there's a spring runoff and lots of willows down next to the water. And everyone was mad at me. They're like, this is ridiculous, Kim. This is so stupid. Why do we have to have our own cans of bear spray? And why do we have to stay together? I was making them do all those bear safety practices that I mentioned. I had my dog with me. My dog was on a leash. We're all staying together. Every couple of minutes, I'm like, woo, we're making noise. We come around a corner and I'm literally walk 10 feet away, no, not like 10 feet, maybe even closer. And literally there is a grizzly bear standing there with two cubs looking right at us. And she's in the middle of the willows and she's like as shocked as we are. And my family's like, oh my God. And she saw us, she saw that we were in a large group. My dog was on a leash, so my dog couldn't attack her. And my dog definitely lunged. And I immediately whipped up my bear spray. I don't think my family did. They all just stood there with their mouths like, I can't believe there's a bear. And she took one look at us and she turned and she ran. And that was it. Now, if I had been on that exact same trail in that exact same situation by myself with my dog off leash, no bear spray, I think that what would have happened to me would have been a very different situation. I might have got charged by that bear. She might have huffed and chuffed, put on a big show. I would, of course, started to back away and give her space. But there was also potential of being that close to her that she may have just run and made contact and attacked me out of defense. So it really goes to show you can still do all the right things and still run into a bear. Amber will speak to this potentially next week when your next class is. Amber Cornick's going to speak. She's gone through this herself, and you know, you can do everything right, you can still have a bad encounter. But if you've got the right things with you, you've got your bear spray, you know what to do, you know how to behave in the encounter, you can get out of it and save your life and save your loved ones' lives as well.
That's great. Somebody asked, does bear spray work on mountain lions?
Great question. So it has only been studied and used on black bears, grizzly bears, and polar bears. In the case of polar bears, it was based off of cases where people had sprayed them out in the field when they were either working or recreating. With grizzly bears, there was a study where they had bears in captivity in the US, and they physically used bear spray on them to see if it was effective. And then since then, the studies have shown through cases where people have used it that it's been 98% effective, people walking away with no injuries at all. So the question, unfortunately, is, does it work on cougars? We don't have any studies on that. Now, we do have cases. I found a case here in Alberta from just a few years ago where a guy ran into a cougar and two cougars, and they ended up running into the bushes, and he's like, oh my gosh, where'd they go? He took out his bear spray. You hear him take the safety clip off, and he has his cell phone, and he's playing a video, he's making a video in the other hand, and all of a sudden you hear him go, ah, and the cougar lunges and he sprays it with bear spray, and then a second one lunges and he sprays it with bear spray, and they leave immediately, and it saves his life. So there have definitely been cases of officers, wildlife officers using bear spray on cougars, people using it, and also in captivity in the United States. In many of the zoos, the zookeepers always carry bear spray on them when they're in the wildcat pavilions, when they're in there, not when the cats are there, but there have been a few cases where they've accidentally had lions or tigers come into the pen with them, and they've had to spray them with bear spray, and it has stopped an attack.
Thanks, Kim. I've had a number of people say that their dogs protect them when they're out hiking in the woods with bears. Are there certain breeds of dogs that are better with bears, or can any of them get you in trouble with the bear?
Any at all. I have spoke to wildlife officers that have come up on the scene of dead bears that were Akitas, Malamutes, large breed dogs. It does not matter. The reality is that we have we've created these dogs that were originally wolves, and we've altered them so much, but we can't just assume that they're now capable of being able to survive and behave properly in the wilderness. They know where their meals come from. They're not thinking about what's my threat in my environment, and we have no control over how that animal out there is going to behave. I have no control over a cougar when there's a dog off leash. I have no control over how that bear is going to react. I could call my dog back, but that doesn't mean that bear isn't going to attack them. It doesn't mean that cougar isn't going to stalk my off-leash dog when I'm out in the wilderness. It's an assumption that we can't have. I used to have an amazing black lab, and he was a hunter dog. He was from a really specific line, great dog. But sometimes if we ran into a bear, he would shake, and he would, he'd let me know there was something going on. Other times he just completely oblivious and would walk by and not even notice there's a bear. So we can't just assume that they naturally know how to behave in those environments. They don't. They're used to being hand fed and wearing people clothes now. It's just not feasible.
Well, I think that might be a great note to end on, such valuable added information. Thank you so much, Kim. And if people have additional questions, check out one of Kim's training series. We've got a lot of great courses coming up, and we've got that discount. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and we hope to see you next week. And please remember to register for the Zoom, and we'll send that to you probably sometime tomorrow or Friday. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Daryl.
It's great to see you all. Thanks, Daryl.
Thanks,
Bye,
Daryl.
Amber. Go to Amber's talk. It's amazing.
It's gonna rock.